Lebanon has actually done well out of the financial crisis. Remember now, we have in the world today an economic crisis, and we have overlapping with that and sort of mixing into it a financial crisis. The financial crisis has served Lebanon very well because the Lebanese banks are in excellent shape. Now, it just so happens that the governor of the Lebanese Central Bank is a guy who wants to become president. So he spends 24 hours a day showing the world what a great guy he is, and he has done a great job. This man, through some rather stringent measures, some rather tough measures, protected the Lebanese banking sector from what happened to some of the Gulf countries. Kuwait, Qatar, UAE had some and rather big problems in their banking sector, not Lebanon. If anything, the Lebanese banking sector now is in better shape than it was a couple of years ago. Another element here is bank secrecy. Bank secrecy is being eroded around the world, particularly in Switzerland, which is the home of bank secrecy, if you'll pardon the expression, the Mecca of bank secrecy. And this bank secrecy in other countries as well is being eroded, not so in Lebanon. So there is an inflow of funds into the country. The banking sector in Lebanon is growing, it's not shrinking as it is in many other places. The individual Lebanese banks, which tend to be quite small, to be fair, are doing extremely well. So several factors have combined to turn Lebanon into boomtown, and one of these is tourism. The other is the strength of the banking sector. The Lebanese diaspora, the Lebanese emigre community, is yet another. Forbes magazine has recently named Carlos Slim as the richest man in the world. Hours, maybe, or days after this announcement was made, Carlos Slim was in Beirut. He hadn't been there since '64. Now, this guy is seriously rich. He's worth something like $65 billion. So let's take an imaginary scenario where everything went wrong for Lebanon, but Carlos Slim decided to pump a few $1 billion into the economy, not because he loves this country, which he does, but because it's good business. He's going to make a lot of money out of it. Then Lebanon will probably still survive. There are others like him. Prince al-Walid, who was, I think, the 18th, 19th richest person in the world, is worth in the tens of billions of dollars. His grandfather was Lebanon's first prime minister under the independent republic, and he is very Lebanese in his, let's say, in his business approach. And there are many others. There are groups of A, mega rich people in many countries. B, there's a huge stratum of reasonably well off, millions, tens, hundreds of millions. There are many thousands of these people all around the world, and they are all coming back to Lebanon or sending the money back or doing something by remote control that involves investment and business. This is one of the elements of Lebanon's success today. The bad news, as I said, I will postpone and talk about the three places as a group. KRG. The Kurdish region is, first of all, a physically very beautiful place. I was lucky enough last summer to go up into the mountains, and I can safely say that Switzerland has absolutely nothing to teach Kurdistan in terms of the beauty of nature. That's the good news. The bad news is the facilities up there were a joke. To actually physically order a bottle of beer, where, of course, beer is served, because this is a bit of a no-no in their culture. Some places serve it, some places don't serve it. That's the first thing a tourist notices, is that, and it puts them off. The second thing is just the simple things like the roads, the basic infrastructure are not really there. Go back to the big city, Erbil. Erbil is a wonderful place because of its people, not because of its infrastructure, which, as I said, is not there. Now, the infrastructure, when I talk about the infrastructure, let's say that we are now in Erbil, it's lunchtime, and I say to my friends here, let's go to an Italian restaurant and have some spaghetti. There isn't an Italian restaurant in Erbil. Let's, after we go to this mythical restaurant, let's go to the bookstore and buy, you know, Donald Rumsfeld's autobiography, which apparently he's working on. There ain't no bookstore in Erbil. Let's go out tonight. I was born in 1947, so I'm not a clubbing person. Let's go out tonight, let's go to a nice pub and listen to some music and have a drink. Nothing. Now, this suggests, of course, that all of these things are going to be built. And this is extremely good news for the economy. Because what you have in Erbil, A, is people who are thirsty. Forget about the pub for a moment. People who are thirsty for all of the trappings of globalization in the 21st century. They want their five-star hotels. They want their nice clothes. The clothes, you don't see poor people in Erbil. You don't see people badly dressed in Erbil. They want their big cars. There are lots of nice cars in Erbil because they have lots of gasoline, because they have lots of oil. They want all of these other things, and they have the money to pay for it because they're getting 16% of the Iraqi federal government revenue, central government revenue from the oil industry. They also have a lot of potential in agriculture, and they have an enormous amount of water. So Erbil today has been practically untouched by the financial crisis because they don't have a banking sector. The banking sector in Kurdistan is very primitive. I keep saying Erbil because it's the big capital city, but Kurdistan in general. The banks in Kurdistan practically don't function as banks. It's almost impossible for somebody to walk into the bank and say, I would like to develop this property, here is the business plan, here is my collateral, I need a loan. Can't do that. They haven't got to that stage yet. Which means that somebody is going to start doing this, and this is economic development. This is starting from the bottom up to build an economy the way that this coastline was developed by the English settlers hundreds of years ago, and the way that other parts of the world are being developed from scratch. That's why Kurdistan is going to be doing very well over the next year or so in terms of the straightforward bottom line GNP. The bad news in all three cases has to do with economic instability caused by political strategic problems. Because economically, if these three places have 1,000% stability, and I should hasten to add that Kurdistan today is as stable as Connecticut Avenue. It's probably slightly safer in terms of crime and other issues. In terms of Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, bombs going off, terrorism, it's probably safer. It's as safe as any place in the world. It is extremely safe. How long is it going to be that way? Lebanon, of course, unfortunately, has become a byword for instability. It is now midday in Washington. It will be late afternoon in Beirut. Anything can happen at any time, for any reason. Because when Bibi Netanyahu met President Obama yesterday, one of them winked at the other, and the other mentioned Lebanon, and all hell is going to break loose. It's happened before. It could happen again. Saudi Arabia, the average person in Saudi Arabia is highly sympathetic to fundamentalist Islam, and many people are sympathetic to Osama bin Laden, to terrorism. Simply put, it's not a nice thing to say, but it's true. That means that the Saudi government's struggle against these people, they call them al-fi'at al-dalla, the misguided, or like the lost sheep.